So this is like a multi-speaker event. Like, how many people do you want at this conference?
8 speakers.
8 speakers. So this is like an all-day thing.
This is all day, 8 to 5 p.m.
On Broadway? Is that where the Wild Horse Saloon
on
is?
2nd Ave.
Okay, on 2nd.
This is closer to like the Hard Rock.
Okay, cool.
So closer to 2nd Ave.
You know, I remember one time I was down in Nashville. I think it was 2nd Avenue where that Taco Bell Cantina is. Man, this was like a year and a half ago. I was down there drinking, and I was kind of lit, and I remember turning the corner going down 2nd Avenue and coming across this Taco Bell, and there was a live band playing out of this Taco Bell, and people. I thought I was hallucinating, man. Like, I thought I had come across some sort of an apparition. I'd never heard about the Taco Bell Cantina concept before. It was really like in the moment I was really confused.
Like, what's happening?
Yeah, I was like, what's going on here? Like, it's like a fever dream type of thing. But yeah, 2nd Avenue is neat. I guess there used to be like a billiards hall down there that I never actually got to go check out. The bombing really closed down a lot of stuff for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's still not untouched. I mean, nothing's been renovated yet.
Really nothing. Why is that? Like, why? Is it just like a private money thing?
I think it's architectural, it's historical overlay,
So there's been no repairs done from that incident?
Nothing.
Damn.
Yep.
And some of those buildings on 2nd, like, they're really cool old buildings, but like the backs of them are falling apart, and like you can just tell that some of them are in like serious disrepair.
Yeah. Yep. It's that. I mean, that's really the history. I mean, they used to pull boats up on that Cumberland kind of at the Lower Broadway area and pull material right in there. Yeah. I mean, it's old school.
I love those buildings, man. Like, it's interesting. I don't know why I started paying attention to it more in like the last 2 years, I think, 2 years. But architecture and how architecture makes you feel is, for some reason, something that I just started noticing. I'm 26 now, so maybe it's just something you start caring about when you're like in your mid-20s, but I don't know. But I just started paying attention to it more, and I like those old buildings. Like,
what do you like about them?
Dude, they just feel good, man. They feel authentic.
Because it's actually someone took time and meaningful thought opposed to expedient behavior to just put them up as quick as possible and make as much money. I mean, look what Nashville's turned into.
Yeah,
that's exactly what our community is.
Yeah, there's definitely that element of expediency, like the older buildings. Well, one, like, I really like the look of the natural material, like the natural brick. Like, I like that look over like the synthetic material look that we see on like a lot of new buildings, and I think that's just like a probably part of just like being in touch with like natural design. I think is something that everybody has built into them, is like to enjoy like natural textures over like synthetic. But yeah, also just the design, like the beauty. Now, I don't know if the ones on 2nd have a lot of the like little intricate details that you see on some of the other buildings on Church Street. There's like an apartment complex on Church Street that has like really nice accents going down the building, around the windows, just really nice stonework. And then really when it comes down to architecture in Nashville, the corner of Broadway and 7th is awesome because you have...
It's a Hume Fog?
Yeah, you have Hume Fog, which looks like a castle. You have...
your Grand Lodge, right?
The Grand Lodge.
Masons.
Yep, the Grand Lodge of Freemasons, Tennessee, right across the street from Hume Fog. Then you have the United Methodist Church and the Customs House. And that's just 4 really, really cool buildings on that one intersection.
Do you think... So you said that you started getting interested in more architectural type of design. You're a Freemason. Do those two things align?
Yes.
Is that what pushed you in that direction as you've become more entrenched in that Freemason community and to now focus your eye on that type of design and architectural growth here in town?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say now that you bring it up, it's actually causing me to make some interesting connections in my head. So, I mean, Freemasonry... I've been a Freemason for 4.5 years, and the pillars of Freemasonry are wisdom, strength, and beauty. So, you know, I mean, I've always been involved in, like, you know, designing media, graphic design, you know, coming up with visuals for events, you know, templates, like, you know, pamphlets, ever since I was like a teenager, like making a pamphlet for my lawnmower business, you know, and like stuff like that. I've always been kind of involved with visual design, but I guess when I got involved in Freemasonry, that beauty element. And when I started talking with, scholars and some of like the more philosophical types that I've found since becoming a Freemason, you really start to realize the importance of this like emulation of nature, which is really why those buildings look so cool, is because they use these natural principles. They follow this pattern that we see in nature that's not man-made. It's really all that stuff that Randall Carlson talks about. You came to that Randall event,
Yeah,
and he touches on that stuff. So yeah, I mean, Freemasonry definitely caused me, not only through the system. I mean, pretty much what it is it's a system of personal development. Almost like you could really think of it like one of the first men's personal development courses
yeah.
ever made.
Except they actually talk to each other in a room together with proximity, togetherness.
Yeah.
We used to do those things, right?
We used to do those
now
things.
You go on a fucking module online.
Join my Telegram.
Yeah, go on a module online and look at a video of someone talking that you've never met, you've never felt their energy, and you pay 50 times more.
Yeah, the in-person experience, it really cannot be replaced, the in-person experience. I definitely appreciate, like, I always try not to be a Luddite when it comes to technology. Like, I'm a fairly I like the woods, man. I like to be outside. I like to be away from technology. So, like, my natural inclination is like a simple form of life. But I also recognize the value of working with the tools that are in the world that you just so happen to be born in, and kind of understanding that it's our I feel like it's our responsibility to use the tools that present themselves in this world for the benefit of mankind. Because you and I both know that there are forces that will use these tools for the disruption of mankind.
How do you balance that? So I find myself struggling with exactly what you just said, right? So we're intelligent enough, we're intellectual enough, we understand what resources we have, we understand we can't be the blockbuster in a world of a Netflix, right? So we use those tools, but let me ask you this: how do you balance that? And being that you want that simple life, you want that natural outdoors, but you understand how important technology is to advance your growth, your business, things like that. How do you balance the two?
Yeah, man. So for me, just my personal practice is a series of, whether it's one day or 2 days, of just going off the grid in the woods, hiking or backpacking.
Weekly, monthly?
Yeah, like generally, like I'll hike once a week on like a Saturday, bring some friends out. But for me, like that, so that's my time to transcend, or to detach myself from the busyness of the modern world, and to kind of elevate myself into a space where I feel closer to my spirit. I'm out in nature. I'm experiencing more natural resonancy with the world.
Is there a set of things you do when you're in that state or that flow or that being? Like, for instance, do you prepare yourself for that hike? Do you read? Do you ask yourself certain questions? Do you surround yourself with certain people on those hikes? Tell me, dive in the details, man. I always see you bouncing around on these trips, and I know we've done a hike before, and I'm looking forward to doing some more with you, but I really want to get in your brain of what you're doing, whether that's right before that hike or during that hike, to really separate. Because me, I hike all the time. Yeah. My problem is I've got a cell phone in my pocket, and my businesses don't necessarily stop on weekends or things like that. So how do you balance that? How do you push through that? How do you prepare yourself to have that separation from the crazy world we live in today?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I think a big part of it is doing what you can to set yourself up for, like, being able to turn your phone off for a little bit, which is pretty tough. Like, your real estate, we're in different businesses. Like, a lot of my stuff is just modulated through the internet. I can schedule things to happen, and there's some softwares I could take advantage of to, like, do stuff while I'm off the grid.
So using the technology to help position yourself to get off the grid for that balance. Yeah. So it's exactly what we're talking about.
So that really is like a full circle thing.
There's the interconnectedness.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, like, use the beast to escape the beast.
Yeah.
So that, you're asking about, like, like, I definitely like to be particular about who's hiking with us, because if you're going to be out all day in somebody's gonna like ruin the vibe, that can ruin the day. So I try to pick people who are ambitious, open mind. Generally, hiking with guys, I just find that the masculine space is just really really potent for like mastermind and idea generation. I think that there's definitely a time and place for co-ed mixing and certain things like, but for me personally, like with the hikes, I just find like the conversations are more open when it's just guys, which actually reminds me of something that Michael Burcham taught me. I think you heard Michael speak at our event at Riverwood Mansion. I don't know if you came to that event or not.
I did not.
Yeah. So Michael Burcham, he founded the Entrepreneur Center, if you know about him.
I met him when he was good friends with my previous partner when I owned the frozen beverage company.
Cool. So Michael,
very smart guy.
Yeah, extremely smart guy. Michael taught me something that you would actually find useful, but I'm sure you know about it in a way. But he said that, when it comes to events, like men are more open to speak up in a room full of men, and women are more open to speak up and be vulnerable about their thoughts in a room full of women. When you get co-ed audiences, the genders are less likely to speak up based on the presence of the other gender, which is interesting, which is something I can totally understand. Like there's stuff that I would talk about, with the guys that, I just probably just wouldn't bring up when the girls are around. Like I'm sure you can understand that. And there's definitely things that girls talk about when guys aren't around. So, I just kind of use that tip.
You see the women groups blowing up locally in Nashville, the events, the Women's Connect. I mean, every woman I talk to in business is integrated into those women only groups.
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason for that, and I think to what you're talking about in your hiking sessions is there's a level of comfortability there.
I think it's great, man. Like I think I got an issue with the whole, and I don't even know where it came from, or I don't even think I can attach it to like a particular political identity, but the idea that every space has to be a co-ed space. Like Freemasonry is a fraternity. It's for men. It's been like that for 600 plus years. There are sororities. Those are for women. They can stay like that. I have no interest in integrating men into women's groups, and
vice versa.
Yeah. And I see no reason to do the same thing vice versa. I think it's important that men and women have space to gather amongst themselves and have conversations.
Totally.
So, yeah, I think like the women's groups that are popping up are awesome. I think it's great for women to have a space where they can, work on their ideas together, and I think it's great for men to have a space where they can work on their ideas together.
The reality of whether it's business or it's personal or it's something that you like and love, a hobby, things like that, the reality of the synergies among people who are alike is there.
Yeah.
Right? So whether it's male, female, it doesn't matter. There's going to be synergies that people go through life as a female and as a male.
Yeah.
I don't understand what a woman has to go through as an entrepreneur to break the glass ceiling or to move through the corporate world. I have no idea. Do I think it's tough? I bet you it is. Do you think they don't get a fair shake sometimes? 100%. But I don't know that, and I can't sympathize with that.
Yeah.
Because I haven't lived it. I don't have the experience. And quite honestly, if I'm talking about it, most women may get offended because it's bullshit. I don't know it. I didn't do it. I didn't live it.
Yeah.
How am I going to speak on it?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I don't really want to go down here during this, but like women's bodies. How can I tell a woman what to do with her body? I don't have that body. I don't go through the hormonal changes in life. I don't go through any of that. I don't go through those life pressures. I don't go through the psychology behind it, right? I don't know any of it. How can I tell a woman what to do with her body? So that's kind of how I just apply my principles and everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I can have an opinion, but it may not be the best because I haven't lived it and gone through it.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is just to stick to the principles that you've experienced in your life, and don't
speak on what you know and
speak on what you know,
how you felt while you were doing it.
don't try to like extend yourself into stuff that you don't understand. It's kind of just a good way to stay out of mud.
So let's back up real quick. You talked about 4 years as a Mason.
Yeah.
Can we chat a little bit about your decision making and what pushed you into becoming a Mason? Like before you've been a Mason, where your head was at, what you were seeking, what you were looking for. Tell me a little bit about that experience, man. I'm super interested in it.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I I went to school at App State,
Okay.
which is in Boone, North Carolina.
Do you know Zachary Baker?
I don't know.
It's the only person I've ever met from App State.
But
he used to be my roommate in Boston.
I'll give you the standard response. Name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Name sounds familiar. But yeah, App State's super cool. It's right in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, like 20 minutes from Johnson City.
Yep.
So it's like right on the North Carolina-Tennessee line. So yeah, in regards to Freemasonry, I was going to school at App State. I think at the time I was 20 or 21. And I was always interested in like the fraternity, like the value of Greek life. But I just personally didn't find myself vibing with any of the particular Greek life fraternities that I kind of came in contact with. Like, I wasn't a huge partier when I was in college. So yeah, like I thought it was really cool for people to have a fraternity, to have a group of guys that they're close with, but I just didn't find a particular one that I felt like I meshed with. So
makes sense.
Kind of had that thought while I was going through college. But yeah, then like I'm 20, 21, and I guess at this point is when I kind of started diving more into like a spiritual search for myself. And, that involved, getting into meditation, writing more, kind of going down this like comparative religion path where I was kind of learning about Buddhism and Hinduism and some of these Eastern spiritual traditions, and kind of seeing how, me being raised just like a non-denominational Christian, right? I started to understand that there were perspectives and beliefs about God and the world that I just wasn't aware of, and perspectives and beliefs that a lot of people around the world practiced, and many of them benefited from.
Is there a key moment that pushed you into that exploration phase that you remember, or was it really just you kind of been exposed to a thought here, and you're like, man, I got to look deeper into all of this?
Yeah.
Or was it like, boom, something happened, and you're like, man, I got to go do this?
It may or may not have been an acid trip.
Okay.
But I was outside.
It was bicycle day last week, wasn't it?
It was bicycle day last week. Yeah. And I think
Did you celebrate bicycle day?
I didn't celebrate. I celebrated by creating some content for the Nashville page.
Perfect.
But I didn't personally indulge in bicycle day this time.
Gotcha.
But no, like it was an experience I had when I was in the woods, man. I was hiking, and I just had an experience that just shaked up some of the paradigms of my mind, an experience that led me to 8 to 12 hours of deeply contemplative self-reflection, and yeah, I guess I just came out of that like really seeking like questions, seeking answers. Like that's probably the best way to put it, was like I was seeking answers. But before we can kind of get into that vibe, like you have to have questions, right? Like you have to realize that there's questions to be asked. And I think most people don't ever kind of get around to realizing that there's questions to be asked. So when you don't have that, then you don't seek the answers. But
you started asking those questions at, you said 2021. I started asking those questions at 3031.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a 10-year difference between some of the questions you've answered and some of that I've answered. In a similar realm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a reason for that. Like there's a reason why certain people find certain things at different parts of their lives. Of their lives. So yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong to it.
Totally. Well, anyways, I took you off track. So you found your answers. You're doing extensive research, a lot of self-reflection.
Well, that's the thing is I never, I don't even think I've found an answer still. Like, that's kind of the thing, is like you really do not ever find the answers.
True.
But what you do acquire, and I know I'm kind of talking about this whole like spiritual journey, whatever you want to call it, from like a fairly vague and wide lens. But I do that because I really think that for every person, it's very individualistic, and it comes down to what who they know, what kind of materials they come into contact with. But I would imagine that somebody listening to this, who has kind of done this, is picking up on what I'm throwing down. But yeah, so I was 21, and I was just like researching all this stuff about different spiritual traditions of the world, and how people how people practice their spirit and how they attempt to identify God and just, various things of that sort. And then I learned that there was this ancient fraternity that was like 600 years old and was essentially this fraternity that preserved and passed down this ancient knowledge. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool to me. It was also at a time where I was doing a lot of this research on my own. I hadn't really found many people because, Boone's like a small college town of like 30,000 people. So I had like a couple friends who were into this stuff, but a lot of it was just me by myself on the internet. And that'll kind of drive you mad.
You mean when you went to all your friends at college and said, hey, do you want to go out into the woods and read a bunch of books about religion? They said no?
Yeah, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. But I did have one friend who would dive into some of this stuff with me. But it really is opening up a can of worms. So, I was like, all right, well, it'd be good to find a group to maybe like talk to about this stuff. I've already been interested in the fraternity, but Greek life wasn't for me.
Yep.
Now I've learned about this Freemason thing where it's apparently this this ancient fraternity that has, this knowledge somewhere in it. I'm like, that sounds cool. That sounds like something I want to join. So it's funny because then I'm like, all right, well, I found a Freemasons lodge in Boone, and I had the idea that like, well, when I find this lodge, I'm gonna find this like group of like secret philosophers of this tiny little mountain town, right? And I thought I was going to stumble upon this, like, super far out group of dudes. And some lodges are like that. My lodge in Nashville is very much like that. My lodge in Nashville's West Nashville Phoenix Lodge is very unique in the sense that it's very potent with ideas. But a lot of lodges are very rural. And in Freemasonry in a lot of places in America is a very, doesn't really dive as deep as generations of Masons beforehand used to. So I found this lodge of fairly simple men. A lot of them were farmers, men of strong Christian faith. Freemasonry is you don't have to be a Christian to be a Mason, but you do have to believe in some sort of a supreme being. So you cannot be an atheist.
Some higher element. Okay.
Yeah, you cannot be an atheist, though.
Is it like Fight Club? Like you can't talk about it?
Dude, really, man? Freemasonry, I love talking about Freemasonry because I think it's something that has greatly impacted my life, and has greatly impacted a lot of men that I know.
Of course.
So some generations used to kind of be hush hush about it because I think that everybody likes to feel like they have a secret that somebody else isn't worthy of, but I'm not really interested in that. Like, I think people should know. There's definitely certain things in Freemasonry that, you just learn about when you join. And that's kind of just part of it, is like there's value for members, You can't like talk about everything or then the membership loses its value.
Of course.
It's privacy,
Yep.
And I like the word privacy over secrecy when it comes to talking about it. But yeah, so I joined this rural lodge and I went through the degrees. So Freemasonry, like when you become a Mason, you essentially go through a 3-step process to become a Master Mason. And what that involves is it's three ceremonies, 3 rituals, 3 initiations, where the members of the lodge come together and they portray these various characters. In the first 3 degrees of Masonry, it's Judeo-Christian, so you encounter biblical characters. And pretty much it's this performance that is put on, and you're the center of attention. Like, you're walked through this grand display in the lodge where the characters act out and teach you different philosophical, spiritual, moral lessons. So you go through one of those. That's really the best way to describe it. Is it's a play. We call them degrees, but it's a play. It's a performance that was written very intentionally to be extraordinarily rich with meaning. So you get walked around. You go through your entered apprentice degree, and then there's a series of like a period of study that you have to go through where you essentially are able to memorize and recall various facts and things from your first degree. It's called a catechetical lecture, and it's essentially just a question and answer, all from memory. So it's all spoken word, mouth to ear, this is something that's forbidden to write this down, actually, when you're learning it. So that's another cool thing is Masonry incorporates some of these ancient memory techniques that we don't really use anymore.
Yeah, and it stays with the culture. It doesn't stay with a piece of paper or a book.
That's right.
So when the culture dies, that dies.
Yeah. So you go through, you memorize your first degree, you're able to essentially answer a 15-minute question and answer conversation, all from memory. Then you go through your fellowcraft, same thing with the study. Then you go through your Master Mason's degree. And each of those degrees incorporates a different angle. You know, the EA is representative of, early life, as a young man. The fellowcraft is representative of middle life, the educational process of a man. And then the master's degree is focuses around death.
So it utilizes the seasonality in our lifespan, essentially.
100%.
Which we hear about a ton nowadays, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these gurus are talking about, well, you're in this season and focused on this. And it comes back to a lot of this stuff that you're saying.
Yeah, so Freemasonry, the degrees are absolutely divided into the seasons of a man's life. I went through all that. I became a member of my lodge in Boone. But my lodge wasn't super active. Like, it was a very, status quo kind of lodge. Like, they'd meet up, they'd have the required meetings, but there wasn't a lot of, extracurricular stuff taking place. Like, our lodge, today, actually, we've got an event at 6 where we've got a guy, Carrick. He's going to get up on stage and talk about his presentation is on mind over matter. Nice. And how, you can incorporate certain mental processes. Sort of the law of attraction is the best way to kind of describe it, But we're going to have 50 Masons gathered to hear him speak, and then we'll have a big dinner afterwards. So nice. My lodge in Boone was not doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, you said dinner after. Is there a specific reason, or is there knowledge with eating amongst peers and sharing a meal? Is that is that done for a reason, or is that just because people are hungry? Because I'm of the belief personally of sharing a meal with someone is not just filling the gas tank of hunger.
No,
there's a lot more to that, and there's roots down to that.
It's absolutely a spiritual experience. So, to answer your question, is there some sort of deliberate instruction book on why we do the meals? No, it's dinner time. People are hungry. But there's a reason. There's still a reason, even though it might not be explicit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sharing food, like you said, is an extraordinary experience. You can learn a lot from sitting down, even having a cup of coffee, something like that. Sharing.
Man, we have great cups of coffee. I feel like we need to do it more and more, but it's usually every couple of months. I'm mind blown. We have a great conversation.
Great conversations. But that's a great point, man. Bringing that up about the importance of fellowship is really how it's described in Masonry. Fellowship.
Yeah, fellowship.
Getting together, sharing nutrients. There's definitely something deeper happening when you do that with people who you care about.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of what put you into this realm of Freemason. It sounds like you admire it. You're still heavily involved. You're going to the event tonight. We were at an event. You're throwing events internally, externally. You're doing a ton of stuff. Where are you now with it? I mean, 4 years. What's the biggest takeaway from that you've received from this group of Masons?
Dude,
if you were to look back and reflect,
yeah,
I'm asking you to reflect, essentially.
For sure. Man, the biggest takeaway is that, so what Freemasonry provides is it provides a space for men to gather, like-minded men to gather and cultivate beneficial ideas. And whether you're a Freemason or not, you need to have that in your life.
Yeah, you need to have that level of friendship or connection, whatever you want to define and call it and use whatever vocabulary word, but that level of trust with another human where you can explore these somewhat out-of-the-box ideas, but also get reference points, opinions, right?
Yeah.
It's not just grabbing a cup of coffee and talking about the latest and greatest on Facebook and what your neighbor did and vacation. You guys are sitting down and having meaningful conversations about, I'm assuming, higher level big ideas based on the society and the world we're in today.
Yeah, that's the idea. And it's also helps whether you have it through a church, you really need to have that space in your life that not only is a group of men who can gather and have those ideas, but you want that group to be unified by some sort of higher principle. Like whether it's like Christianity, you and 10 friends, 10 guys meet up to talk about these ideas through the lens of promoting Christianity. Like there needs to be some sort of higher ideal that's driving that mastermind. And Freemasonry provides that in the sense that, nobody in that room is an atheist, so there is this natural inclination for, divinity. But then Freemasonry itself is a structure, is a system that can be promoted in a way. Yeah. So that's my biggest takeaway, man. It's just the importance of healthy male space, and how, and really like how much of a game changer that is for young men coming up into the world, because it's a very confusing world that we live in. Like, there's so many ideas coming at you from so many different angles. Like, you really need to be able to sit with people you trust. I think you use that word trust.
Yep.
Super important. You trust them and have those in-person conversations.
Now, if I asked you, has there been a transformation since you've joined? You personally? Like, did you start as one person and you've now transformed into this other person?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my lodge is West Nashville Phoenix, and the Phoenix is not necessarily strictly a Masonic symbol, but it's a symbol of rebirth. Every Mason, everybody who becomes a Freemason actually goes through a ceremonial rebirth, which is something that predates Freemasonry, thousands of years. I mean, most spiritual traditions and ancient rites experience in some way, state, or form a ceremony of rebirth for young men. Oftentimes in like ancient societies, this would involve some sort of hallucinogenic. Freemasonry, we don't use a hallucinogenic anymore, as cool as that might be. But just the idea of the initiation from boyhood into manhood is an archetypal experience. Freemasonry preserves that, so that's another cool thing that Freemasonry is holding on to. So yes, everybody who is a Freemason should answer yes to your question. If you're talking to a Freemason who answered no to your question about them feeling changed, then they either were not ready for Freemasonry or they were rushed into something that just wasn't for them. Like, I would be very surprised if you got that answer. Me personally, we were kind of talking earlier about like, I started paying attention to architecture, et cetera, et cetera. Like, Freemasonry encourages you to study a more holistic, wide lens approach to life. I think now it's like really easy to kind of get caught up into like the current narrative of the way things are now and to base our beliefs off of what's going on now, which is like what most people are. Like, unfortunately, most people simply echo like the Tennessean headline of the week. Like, 100%. That's what they believe. And whether they echo it explicitly or whether they take the idea and it turns into something else, like it's very much so this like copy paste.
I see this in real estate.
Yeah, for sure.
You look at a national headline and think the Green Hills condo market in Nashville is crashing.
Yeah.
The Green Hills condo market hasn't had inventory in 2 years.
Yeah.
If you buy something, you will appreciate $50,000 this year on a condo.
Yeah.
So it's funny because
that's an interesting way to.
That's literally what I see, and I have to talk people off. Call it the headline ledge.
Yeah. So you've got this whole thing figured out.
Yeah, I have to talk you off the ledge because of the headlines, not the reality and perception that's in this sub-market that's very specific to what's happening today or the last 6 months.
That's awesome. So so Freemasonry kind of walks you off the headline ledge mindset.
Yeah.
Where it says, hey, like, not only is this 600 plus years old, but, mankind's been around for a very long time. Here's a list of principles that men have used to better themselves for thousands of years. And when you get introduced to ideas like that, I mean, it's just, it's a natural thing that you'll change.
There's depth in your perspective.
Yeah.
That's
a great
how
way
I'd
to put it.
probably line that up. There's depth in your perspective because you're not taking a subset category over the last 6 months. You're taking the last 600 years.
100%.
And when you're talking theory, like you're talking and practice and psychology and all these and skill set and knowledge and all these things, you want to take that wide range.
Yeah.
To then define what your position and opinion is on it based on that scope.
Yeah, really, it's just, I mean,
Makes sense to me, dude.
Yeah,
it makes total sense to me.
It makes sense, man. Sometimes things just make sense. For me, it's like, to kind of use your verbiage, I look to develop width and depth in my life.
Yep.
And one without the other is asking for an issue. You can be the deepest thinker in the world, but if you haven't developed some sort of physical foundation for yourself to exist in this world, then you're gonna have a hard time. Or if you've done the work materially, you've spread yourself out, you've got a ton of friends, but you've never done that inner work, you're gonna have a hard time. Sooner or later it's gonna smack you in the face. So, width and depth, that's always been kind of two analogs of how I look to develop myself as a man.
I love it. It's so important.
Yeah.
So important. It ultimately comes back to that situation of how can you help someone when you need the most help yourself?
Yeah.
Right? You've got to take care of your inner perspective to progress and push out to that outside perspective.
In a really practical.
And that's real because people, their energy, right? Like I feel the energy in this conversation. Like this changed your life, dude. I can feel it without the words.
Yeah.
Just being in this proximity and this presence with you, you're passionate about it. I can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's like, and just to kind of go back to what you said, fixing yourself first is, when the airplane's going down and the masks pop out, what do they tell you to do? They tell you to put your mask on first and then help your kids. So, that's just kind of remind me of that, what you just said. You can't help anybody unless you've helped yourself.
And it's crazy. In society, I think, especially in today's world, that metaphor that you just talked about with the mask, that's almost like wrong. You're gonna save yourself before your child.
Yes.
It's like, well, I'm if I save myself, I'm the most equipped to save my child.
Yeah.
Right? If you work on yourself and understand yourself to better yourself, you're now going to position yourself to be the most equipped to help others. And quite honestly, to help the person who you used to be.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a pretty good point, man. I mean, you definitely can take a collectivist mindset too far where it strips away individuality and individual empowerment. Stephen Covey's, what's that book? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the principles of that book that is directly related to what you're talking about is independence comes before interdependence. Before you can be an effective part of a team, you have to be an effective individual yourself. So, I'm pro individuality, pro personal development, pro personal empowerment for the use of making the world better.
Of course.
One of my mentors, Anthony Cherry, he's an OG real estate guy here in town. Spends a lot of his time down in South America now, but he said if you want to save the world, or if you want to help the world, help yourself. If you want to fix the world, fix yourself. And I think it's easy to get caught up in all the issues around us and never look at the issues that are right in front of us and take care of those. So I think that's a pretty big perspective shift that's important to really make this kind of internal progress that we're talking about.
Totally. Sometimes we miss it.
Yeah.
Most of the time we miss that concept.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you just got to be selfish sometimes, So,
Warren, you're 26, right? You're a very intelligent, very intellectual guy. You understand the sense of community. We've known each other for a couple of years now. We've hung out, we've hiked, we've gone to events together.
Yeah, it's been a great time.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah, dude. For someone that is at your age that hasn't gone through some of this personal development or this intellectual kind of progression, I would call it, right? you're a young guy. You're 26. You started exploring this stuff. You've got a lot of characteristics. You know, I can personally say, since I know you, that your core values are pretty drilled down. Like, I know what I'm getting with Warren. I know that there's a level of trust there. There's sincerity there. You're a straight shooter. Those things don't just happen, right? So you've done that. You've explored different avenues to kind of build these core beliefs. What advice do you have for someone who may have not gone through this yet in their life? Maybe they're 25, maybe they're 20, maybe they're 35, and they're like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for that person to kind of help them navigate where they may say, you know, I don't think joining Freemasons is my next move, but any advice for that person to kind of...
Dude, yeah, man. I mean, so I think maybe one of the reasons why I act this way or have like had the opportunity to pick up some of these character traits early on is because I just like went through a bunch of bullshit. You know what I'm saying, man? Like, you can't avoid the uncomfortable experiences that lead to failure oftentimes. So, you know, whether it's like a breakup or for me, like, you know, I was going to school, dropped out of school, and just had my hands in a bunch of different businesses that I was working on launching, you know, a car detailing business, the lawn business, you know, social media marketing business for the local restaurants and doing like all this stuff that I was doing. So I just went through, like, I put myself on the wash cycle and, you know, had to make a lot of decisions for myself. I was on my own a lot of the time. And like, I didn't go into like a conveyor belt process that, you know, go to school, get the degree, get put in the 9 to 5. And then it's kind of like this ABC. It's really like outlined for you. Like when you go through that clear path to success, that's somebody else dictated for you, then I don't think you pick up on some of these insights that you get when you create your own path.
No, what you're doing, and I'm someone who experienced that. I did that, right? I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I went the corporate route. I went the college just to get the fucking piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right. I applied stuff because I was working full time and taking night classes, right? So I had the duel of like, go to class, learn how to interview people, and then interview people next week, right?
Yeah.
But I went through that path, and when you're going through that path, all you're focused on is the plan that they've laid out for you and how to succeed and get to it to the end as fast as possible. And you don't have time for self-reflection.
Yeah.
You don't have time for seeking understanding. You don't have time for questioning things and digging and diving deeper. And that's all bullshit, because I did have the time. But when you're enacting that plan, you're just so drilled on accomplishing that plan, right? Because there's an incentive behind it. There's a bonus. You get a vacation. You get a new title. It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all predicated to complete the task at hand, which is to do the job for the corporate company.
Yeah, and I think really what it comes down to is like when you're not making decisions but you're taking actions based on somebody else's decision, then you don't necessarily have the emotional or mental investment into the outcome. So like if I decide to start a business and that business blows up, like that's on me and I have to deal with 100% of that. But if I get, you know, if somebody tells me to do something for their company, and you know, I go do it and something doesn't work out, there's less, it's like there's other things that it could be on.
There's not, the attachment isn't there.
There's not the attachment. There's not like the emotional relationship to it. So I think that really you have to just be mindful of, you know, keep yourself occupied with things that you have emotional and mental relationships with, because then all of you is invested in seeing that happen. And you're not going to cheat yourself.
You've got to do things where you can lead with the heart, maybe, because that's what matters at the end of the day. When the money's stripped, when the promotion's stripped, when the company goes bankrupt because the owner had a coke problem, right? Like, at the end of the day,
0 to 100.
If you're doing all that shit,
yeah,
and there's no purpose, there's no belief, you're not doing anything to change lives based from the heart, all that goes away. You're empty.
Yeah.
You weren't filling filling yourself up. You're filling someone else's tank up.
Yeah.
And they had all the control to either bring this thing to the top or plummet it 60 feet down in the ground.
Yeah. And I use the word emotionally attached, which, I think that maybe there is like a clarification, like, oftentimes our emotions mislead us. I do believe in working from the heart, but maybe what would be a better way is like be principally attached to the things that you're working on, like the purpose behind the project, what the goal is with it, what will it do for you when it's done, what will it do for your community when it's done. Like having those ideas, like that's fuel for a really, really productive machine.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my event business. It's really transitioned into how do I benefit the community? What does the community need?
Yeah.
What do people in Nashville need locally? This is my home. This is where I met my wife. This is where I started a family. This is where I'm going to be for a while. How do I put myself in a position to help others that's meaningful?
Yeah.
Not expedient, right? Everybody's like, oh, this big conference you're throwing, Jim. When is it? It's in October. Oh, you planned it 8 months prior? 100%. Because it's not about the speed. It's about the power that's going to go into that one-day conference and then those 4 other workshops afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
if it was about the money, I would have done it already. If it was about anything else, I would have done it already.
Yeah. Yeah, what you said.
I don't want 8 months of stress, right? But that 8 months is good stress because I'm pouring meaning into it and the curriculum and how it's going to change and who it's for, right? Diving deep into making the change, not just putting on a facade with a bunch of entertainment.
Definitely gives you time to cultivate like a quality experience for people.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
But I like what you said. You're talking about, Nashville. This is where I met my wife. This is where I'm going to be for a while. Like, that's another thing I think super important is having a relationship to your local community. It's really easy nowadays to scroll on Instagram. Oh, this person, like, here's a message from, Bali, and this person's in Ukraine. This person's over in Japan. Like all these, like global politics will drive you crazy. Global politics will confuse the hell out of your soul. Like, I think that most people, rather than looking at the problems in the world around them, they need to look at what's in my front yard. What can I do here? And I think that that's a more practical path to purpose and fulfillment for most people when it comes to like what they're going to involve themselves with on like a community, basis. I think that the interconnection of the internet, super awesome how quickly information can move around, but like it causes people to not pay attention to what's in front of them and to pay attention to these things that like hardly even impact their lives, if even impact their lives whatsoever. So I think the fact that you're like doubling down on Nashville, I think that's awesome, and I think that's like an extremely admirable characteristic.
And at the end of the day, people will come from other states and places, but how do I do a survey and understand locally what we need and then provide that? And if you need that out of Boston, LA, and New York, then come on, let's welcome you, right? You're part of the family, right? I'm not going to exclude you, but how do I build it based on what I hear, what I see, where I play, where I work? How do I do that locally?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like that, man. It's kind of like
it's interesting. A lot of people ask me through the progression of this company when we're going to go nationally and where I'm expanding, and that was a thought in the beginning. And I was lost, man. It's exactly what you're talking about. But I had to lose myself to find myself, because at the end of the day, I'm not doing what I want to do locally in Nashville. How the hell do I want to bring this somewhere else? Or why the hell would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Right? And hopefully this conference is a stepping stone to that other larger growth, but I got to make sure that this is a conference that's going to change lives locally here in Nashville.
Yeah, I just love the local vibe. Like, it's like walkable pockets of Nashville, like like all these little places where you can walk, go to the bakery, go have some coffee. Like I just love the experience of the intimate social experience in an area. Yeah, there's something to it. It really comes back down to that human connection element that we even started this whole conversation with. It's like there's something about just being close to people, knowing your neighbors, and kind of having that close local relationship with the people and the businesses around you?
The perfect example I can give of this situation is something that's happened to me in the last 3 or 4 months. I go to the gym. I got a Y membership.
Nice.
I go to East Nashville. Great. Do my workout. Cool. Go home. I go to Northwest over in North Nashville. Dude, there's a sense of community there.
Yeah.
You walk in, say, hey, Jim, someone's fist bumping me.
Totally
you get in the
different.
sauna. No one has headphones in, is on their phone. Everybody's having a conversation.
Yeah.
Everybody, and it's not business. No one's trying to sell. It's not like a networking event where it's awkward, you're unsure. Like, the commonality amongst those people in that sauna is everybody's here to try to get healthier and live longer.
Yeah.
And with that togetherness comes those conversations, and it goes down all these different paths. But it's just so interesting to me because there's a completely different perspective based on that which Y I go to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Completely different.
Why do you think it is? Do you think it's just like regional?
I think it's generational.
Okay.
And that's a very bold statement because I don't have any data surrounding that.
So there's more older guys at the Northwest YMCA?
There is an older community
Yeah.
that's a little bit more friendly, whereas in East, everybody's just, it reminds me of Boston. Headphones in and out.
Yeah.
It is not a Nashville vibe, I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? Where I'm from, Boston, it feels back home where it's headphones in, no one has conversations, everybody does their thing, in and out, boom, boom, boom. It's Boston, dude. You walk down Boston, I walk past 1,000 people going through the Commons, and no one will even look at each other and say hello.
Yeah.
Then you go to Northwest, and it's like, literally, dude, 5:01, the place is opening, and the guy's giving me a fist bump.
Yeah.
You know, get out, good workout. And then he comes over, and he's like, hey, yeah, you know, straighten your back a little bit. You see, you feel more. You can't do as much weight. That means you're building muscle, right?
Yeah.
That shit don't happen in East.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, man, that's and you know, I guess there's a lot of you know, a lot of stigma behind like certain European countries that are also like that. It's just like very cold. There's not like a lot of like, hey, how's it going? Good morning type of stuff taking place, which I think is great, man. Like Southern hospitality, I mean, you really can't beat it. I mean, it's such a unique experience. Yeah, man, like, you know, whatever kind of problem you're trying to figure out in life, like at some point you're going to realize that a lot of life's happiness is just enjoying the social aspect of people around you who you care about. It's
Totally.
like super
Totally.
simple, you know?
I mean, I experienced that Southern hospitality this weekend. It's for the second time. I was up in Kentucky, and my car died. And we're at an Airbnb. It's 10:30. We're supposed to check out at 11.
Yeah.
Just packed everything up. Baby's in the car. Wife's in the car. Checked the fire from last night. Okay, no hot coals. We're out of here. Doesn't start. Dude, we're in an 1830s cabin near an abandoned cave.
I saw it on
in
that
Kentucky.
Cave looked awesome, man.
And I'm like, oh, there's a car coming. Run to the street, flag him down. The guy's intoxicated. Smells like straight vodka, older gentleman. You can tell he doesn't want to help me, right? Like that guy's, it's like 10 o'clock. That guy's going to the liquor store to get more booze,
Yeah.
right? Or he passed out somewhere and is trying to get home in the morning. Like older guy, stunk.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have jumper cables. I'm like, I got a pair. He's like, okay, I'll help you out. We go down. We go to jump the car. He gets out, almost falls down. That's how drunk this guy is.
Dude, this
right?
is at 9 a.m.
This is at 9 a.m. He circles the car, almost falls, has to hold on to the hood. I'm like, this guy's going to fall down. And he helps me out, man. Jumps my car, solves my problem in 5 minutes.
Dude, that's a pretty interesting interaction, man.
Right? But I'm like, that's
poor
Southern
guy.
hospitality, dude. Because, and like, I literally turned over to my wife. I'm like, our problem was solved in 5 minutes based on the kindness of a human.
Yeah.
If that was in Massachusetts, I'd probably go buy 15, 20 cars that wouldn't even stop for me.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Why do you think it is? In like Massachusetts specific, is it just because everybody's cold?
I think it's just a lot of it is, I think we live in fear. And I think that the first thought for a lot of people is that person waving me down is going to rob me or hurt me, or we're just live a fast life where that's not important, where I'm trying to go and I need to do this and this has to happen and then I got to go to this party tonight and then I got to do this tomorrow and then it's work week, right? Like we forget that dude, that person's on the side of the fucking road for a reason, asking for your help. And it literally took that guy 5 minutes, and he solved my whole problem.
Yeah. That's
right?
awesome.
Who was I going to get to jump me? I would have to sit on that curb and wait for another car, which could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah,
That's
man.
the second time in Kentucky someone saved me. The first time I was going to the casino, blew out a tire at 6 o'clock at night, called a random tire company. The guy's like, we just closed, but if you get here in an hour, I'll come back and help you out. I have to call him. Like, the tow truck never showed up. I waited an hour and a half.
Dang.
He goes, call this guy. Tow truck comes up, drops me off. The guy meets me back at his shop at 8 o'clock at night, opens it up, changes my tire, and wouldn't even take a tip.
That's incredible. That's super cool.
Twice in Kentucky, man. So I gotta throw some love for Kentucky.
You got
Those
good
people
vibes.
are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And we were, again, in the middle of nowhere up in Kentucky.
You got good luck up. You got to go throw some money on the horse races. You got good luck up in Kentucky.
I know.
It sounds
Shit,
like.
man. I'm stay away. No.
But yeah, man. No, yeah, just like Southern
that guy,
hospitality, generosity.
That guy, I gave him $20. I only had a 20 on me. He didn't want to take. I'm like, take this $20. It's the best $20 I spent. I can promise you that. Honestly, that was the best $20 I spent in the last year.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. Because Southern hospitality and generosity. My idea is that those stem from internal feelings of abundance. Like if I don't feel internally abundant, then of course I'm gonna like really protect my space and be kind of in my own thing and like not want to help anybody. But if I feel like my cup is overflowing, then obviously that type of feeling, you'll have no reason not to help somebody else.
Totally.
So, I don't necessarily know. And like I said, this is just me theorizing. Like I just thought of that, but I don't know what it would be about the Southern culture that would create that feeling of overflow in somebody that would lead to that type of interaction. But I think that that's probably what it is.
Do you think it's just morals and how people were raised?
That definitely has a big part to play in that for sure. Absolutely.
Because I think back now that we're talking about this to a situation in my life where car crashed, hit a telephone pole. I was probably 7 years old. Out front of the house, car flips. It's on fire. And my dad drags the person out. The cops come. Did you touch him? Yes, I moved him. Okay, well, if something happens, you could be arrested for and go to jail for manslaughter. You're not supposed to touch the person.
Yeah.
And then my dad coming in the house at I'm like 7 or 8, telling me that story and telling me, if you see someone that they're in a car accident and the car is about to fucking catch on fire and they're about to die, you save that person's life. I don't give a shit what the law says, what a piece of paper says.
Yeah.
And if you go to jail for manslaughter, I guarantee you that you will live in that level of abundance because you saved someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that situation has a lot, because I think of it yesterday. We were driving down the street. Someone got in a car accident and someone was helping the person, but I stopped. I'm like, should I get out? Should we go help him? Should we go help him? And my wife's like, someone's already helping him. Like someone literally was helping them. So I was like, man, maybe it's how I got brought up, that if someone's in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the way that we behave is just like how we were raised. It's actually pretty incredible. Yeah, the first 7 years of our lives determine like a lot of who we're going to be. Jordan Peterson's got some good stuff about that. The formative years, he says.
Formative years, yes. Yeah.
He says that. I mean, you've got a
5-month-old.
You've got a 5-month-old.
Oh yeah, it's that is, and we talked about this when we had coffee last time, but that is the stress of what beliefs am I going to pour into this child? How am I going to protect that child? And do I have everything? Am I missing anything?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the stress for me with the child, is like, I can fuck up this kid's life, or I can, change their life and change, potentially the world.
Yeah, I don't have any kids, so like I cannot relate personally to that particular thing. But I do have a question for you. So I was thinking about this last night. What, in regards to your relationship with your child, how does hope like manifest? because I feel like for a lot of people, like what drives us is hope. I'll just explain my whole thought. So, like hope for a better future, hope for something better than it is now, hope for something greater, like that. If you've ever read Man's Search for Meaning, you read that book, Viktor Frankl? He's a Holocaust survivor. He's an Auschwitz survivor, and this book is awesome. It's like 146 pages. Man's Search for Meaning. It's like one of the fundamental, like personal development books, of the of the 20th century, and in that book, he essentially talks about his observations into how people, prisoners of these camps, like what would make or break somebody's mindset. Like what did the people who were able to endure this suffering, like what kind of character traits did they have? And
they didn't give up.
They didn't give up, but he found that. So he essentially created this. It's called logotherapy, and I don't remember all of the bullet points of it, but he said that the number one thing that he observed while he was in this camp was that people who had hope for the future, hope that they would be reunited with their loved ones, hope that they would be home again, hope that they would be free, those were the people who endured suffering the greatest. As soon as somebody lost hope in that bright future, they didn't make it. So I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I feel like most people, like when most people have a child, because I think like the general consensus is like, all right, everybody wants their kid to be better than they are, right? Like that's kind of like the general vibe, right? So I feel like for a lot of people,
it's like this common thing where it's like, well, as long as they do better than me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, it's not good enough, dude.
It's a common thing.
It's not good enough.
But I feel like I don't know, I feel like the child represents like physically this idea of hope. And I think that's why for some people it lights such a fire under people's asses when they have a kid. Like I said, I'm literally talking from no experience whatsoever.
So I think what the relation is amongst those two things is the people that have that hope and want their child to do things potentially could be suffering from trauma that they never accomplished those things.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because what I'm trying to do is ensure that the mindset's strong enough to accomplish the goals and no one belittles your goals, right? So I think there's hope in that you're how do I put it? You're attached to this thing and your mindset needs to stay strong. So I think I probably use the word mindset, but I really probably mean hope.
Yeah.
Right? Like your mindset is strong, you believe in it, you hope that it's going to transform into what you want it to be, and you have that belief behind it. But I think for me, because in my 20s, I never lived in the present, that I think there's a big piece of reminding children today to just take a step and look around, because we're always going to be trying to progress for the next thing and get the next thing. And sometimes we just need to live in the moment and go, life's pretty cool. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also like, to bring it back, to keep hyperlinking to our earlier conversation. That's another thing with like the nature, the hiking, the backpacking. You're in the moment. Like, when you're
those birds chirping.
Yeah, the birds are chirping, or you're like, I remember I did Fiery Gizzard, which is an awesome trail, and like I got caught in a thunderstorm. Like I got my tarp up, I'm in my hammock, and this rainstorm is just beating the hell out of this ridge that I'm staying on. And like, you're there. Like you can't really go anywhere else. Like you're stuck in the moment. And what I like about...
There's no button to hit? There's no easy button?
What I like about it, though, what I like about specifically backpacking and overnight trips is that it's a very, like, it introduces you to very raw moments in life. Like, I'm wet, I need to get dry. I'm cold, I need to warm up. I'm thirsty, I have no water, I need to go get water. I need to make food. Just these, like, the very essentials. And
to things we take for granted.
And
don't even think about on a yearly basis. Don't even think about.
So when you're out there and you have this, like, these interactions with these extremely primitive necessities of your life, you learn to appreciate them on a much deeper level. So that's another thing that I like about the outdoorsmanship stuff, is how it really it reminds me of a Henry David Thoreau quote, which I put on my Instagram recently. I've been working on just like putting more content out on the gram. But he said it in 1846 or something. He said I went to the woods. This is after he writes Walden Pond. He essentially went and lived in this cabin.
Yeah, I know
for
the
an
cabin.
extended period of time.
It's up near me, up in
Yeah,
Boston.
I've never seen it, but he says I went to the woods to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, so that when I died, I would never come to find out that I had never lived. And I thought that was really interesting. I butchered it and paraphrased it a little bit, but
Well, I think
general idea.
we get so wrapped up in all these materialistic things, these fake things, and don't actually understand, live in the present, and realize how fucking good we got it, man.
Yes.
The fact that I can just hit a button and warm water comes on that's clean
Pretty crazy.
is nuts. If you
Absolutely nuts.
start thinking about what needs to go into place for that to happen, how many little pipes are under the ground that you don't see, never think about ever,
Yeah.
the water filtration system, where we're getting that water, how we're purifying it, how we're cooking it, how we're boiling it. I mean, a lot of that water is your shit water that gets boiled and gassed out and the H2O leaves, and then it gets repurposed into clean water.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever went to those water tanks, which I have, I don't know how I ended up there, but I've watched this occur. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact
I've never ended up in those places. I don't know how you got that tour, but
yes, I don't either.
don't invite me next time you go. I don't want to
It's
see
actually cool to watch, but
This is like a
I don't know
water
how a guy, like the
treatment
guy was
plant?
eating his lunch in the fucking place. I was like, I don't know how
Yeah.
you're doing that. It smells like shit, but
But yeah, the society we live in. I mean, we're all living like kings and queens.
and the fact of the matter that, I mean, we're hungry and we complain that our food shows up cold, or we're missing French fries, but we got the pizza, and my day's ruined. Like,
Yeah. It's pretty silly.
get out of your own head. Yeah, like you're ridiculous.
Yeah, I try
But-
to.
We're all victim to it, dude. I do it all the time.
Yeah,
Right? My wife reminds me, I speak on a concept called radiate positivity in a negative world. And she's like, you're upset about that, Jim? Radiate positivity. It's just, and I'm like, you're right.
she hits you with it.
You're right.
That's awesome.
But we live in it, right? I'm not gonna lie and say I don't act like that, and I do take things for granted all the time. I just try to tone it down a little bit, live
Yeah.
in that present.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. I mean, life is super nice now, and that's why, just like when you go outside and go like a night without those things, like that warm shower feels pretty good when you've like been out hiking for 2 days and, through the rain. Like a warm shower feels pretty good. It's not the same.
And we live in a world where people purposely do cold plunges.
Yeah, how about that?
How fucking funny is that?
Dude, I saw this funny video. It was these guys talking on a podcast, and they're like, you imagine if Wim Hof was on the Titanic? And it was like, he probably would just be in the water before the ship even.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the moment he's been waiting for.
Yeah. 2 fingers up.
Dude, yeah. The cold
Screw you guys. I'm gonna live.
the cold plunge thing is cool, man. I love it. Like, I love getting in cold water. Like, but now's a good time where you can go on some of these hikes. Like, me and I took like 9 guys to Savage Gulf State Park, and we did this 9-mile loop. But for part of that loop, you're going along the river, and there's this lagoon that I found on that river that is just, it honestly looks like something from heaven, like a place where like fairies would live.
Is it blue water, like all the limestone
Blue
made
water.
the water blue?
It's incredible. And we all like got in the water, like super, it's probably like 34, 35 degrees, and got in the water for 5 minutes. Like, you feel really good. There's no denying like how good you feel after getting in cold water. I think it's great that it's kind of become like a trendy thing. Like, I'm for it, I don't know. I mean, I personally feel really good when I do cold water. Like taking a cold shower makes me feel really good. So
It's just funny to me that we have to go buy these expensive things and these materials to have a cold plunge.
Yeah.
And it's good for you, and it raises your dopamine and all that and your levels. But it's just funny because people were doing that every day.
yeah,
And now it's like this luxury almost where people are, buying these expensive tubs and $200 worth of ice to put in it and all
I
this
do
crazy shit,
Yeah, I do think it's funny when like normal primitive things become like health trends.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess it's just part of us like waking up in the modern world and doing what we can to reconnect to some of the patterns of our past.
Totally.
I'm cool with it, you know?
Totally. Well, I appreciate you spending some time today and
Dude,
chatting
yeah,
life. I mean, we went through what? Mason, family, living in the present, nature.
For
We did it
sure.
all, man.
I think so. I think there's a whole lot more to talk about. We didn't even get into any of like the social media, like with Media Farm and the Nashville page, and I mean, there's like a whole lot of stuff that we could keep talking about, and maybe there's another day where we should plan that.
Well, I appreciate you, bro. Let's do
Yeah, I
this
love
again,
it, man,
dude.
for sure.
Yeah.